The twin suns of Zalara hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the palace of the Zalari Empire. The city shimmered with glass towers and bridges that floated in midair, humming with energy. The air smelled faintly of ozone and flowers, a strange combination that seemed to say this was a place of elegance and danger at the same time. Princess Alindra Zalari, daughter of Emperor Valen, stood on the balcony of her chambers gazing at the bustling capital below. Her lips curved into a faint, amused smile. Soon she would marry a human, a representative from a distant world called Earth. The humans had only recently revealed themselves, a young species, fragile-looking and soft in appearance. Most Zalari dismissed them as weak, primitive creatures, but they had been forced to recognize them after Earth's first expedition destroyed 3 Zalari warships without losing a single human life. Alindra's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime. Her personal aide, a young Zalari named Talira, appeared in a shimmer of blue light. "Princess," Talira said politely, her voice smooth and melodic. "Captain Daniel Reeve from Earth has arrived for the formal introductions." Alindra's eyebrows rose. She had imagined the human in countless ways. A towering brute, a polished diplomat, a fragile scholar who would tremble at Zalari etiquette. What she hadn't expected was a man of ordinary height, slightly lean with dark hair and calm, curious eyes that seemed to measure everything without judgment. She stepped back from the balcony, smoothing her ceremonial gown. It was a traditional Zalari dress of deep violet and silver, the fabric catching the light like water. "Bring him in," she said softly. "I want to see this harmless human for myself." The doors opened and Daniel walked in. His posture was relaxed but not careless. He bowed politely, just enough to show respect but not submission. Alindra observed him carefully. His hands were calloused, his shoulders broad enough to suggest strength, yet his movements were measured and precise. "Princess Alindra," he said, his voice calm and warm, "it is an honor to meet you." Alindra hid a smirk. "The honor is mine, Captain Reeve," she said, her tone polite but tinged with amusement. "I hope you will find our palace comfortable, or at least not frightening." Daniel's eyes twinkled faintly. "I am sure I will manage. Humans are adaptable." The words made Alindra tilt her head. He spoke softly, almost humbly, yet there was a strange confidence in him. Not the arrogance of a Zalari warrior, but a quiet certainty that unsettled her. Dinner was held in the Grand Hall, a vast room of crystal walls and floating lanterns. Zalari nobles filled the space, their long limbs moving gracefully, their eyes flicking toward Daniel with curiosity and skepticism. He did not flinch under their gaze. He moved slowly and deliberately, choosing his words with care, nodding to the nobles, responding to their questions with thoughtfulness. Alindra watched him closely. He was ordinary, too ordinary perhaps. Her initial amusement turned to mild boredom. Surely this human could not be interesting. After all, he walked among the most powerful beings in the galaxy without a hint of fear. During dessert, Alindra leaned toward him. "Captain, tell me, humans are known for their primitive technology. You still use swords?" she asked, hiding a small laugh. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, some of us do. On Earth, we believe in learning to defend ourselves, even with simple tools. Sometimes that is enough." Alindra's laugh was soft, almost a whisper. "How quaint. I suppose it is comforting to imagine that a human could fight with a stick." She waved her hand in the air, dismissing the notion entirely, but she could not deny that there was something about him that made her uneasy. Perhaps it was his calm eyes. Perhaps it was the way he carried himself. Or perhaps it was the subtle awareness he seemed to have, the way he noticed details others overlooked. After dinner, Alindra retired to her private garden, a terrace filled with bioluminescent flowers that glowed like stars. Daniel followed, asking permission politely. She allowed him, curious about why he wished to wander. The human moved slowly through the garden, touching the plants with care, observing their light, their shapes. Alindra watched from the shadows, realizing he was unlike anyone she had ever seen. There was patience in him, but also a quiet intensity. "Why are you staring at me?" Daniel asked suddenly, not angrily, but with gentle humor. Alindra stepped into the light, laughing softly. "I am studying you. Humans are mysterious. I thought you would be fragile, timid, harmless. Yet you move as if you belong here. Daniel tilted his head. We belong wherever we can survive, he said. That is all? Alindra paused. His words were simple, but there was a strength behind them that she could not ignore. Survive, she repeated softly. Is that what humans call courage? Daniel's gaze met hers, calm and unwavering. It is what humans call living. To survive, we must understand the danger, respect it, and face it when it comes. Alindra's heart stirred with a mix of curiosity and unease. She had thought herself clever enough to judge this human at first glance. Yet here he was, proving her assumptions wrong without raising his voice, without showing strength in a way she could immediately measure. That night, Alindra returned to her chambers and found herself thinking about Daniel long after she had drifted into sleep. She wondered about his past, about the wars humans had fought, about the strength that hid behind his calm demeanor. Meanwhile, Daniel sat quietly in his own chamber, writing notes in a small journal. He wrote of the beauty of the Zalari Empire, of the strange grace of the princess, and of the caution he must exercise. Humans had fought and survived countless enemies, but the Zalari were unlike any species he had encountered. They were strong, proud, and dangerous, yet he did not fear them. He had faced far worse, and he knew that a sword could protect life when used correctly. The next morning, Alindra found herself in the training yard, watching her brother, Prince Kalor, spar with his instructors. Kalor's movements were swift, precise, and full of Zalari grace. He noticed Daniel approaching and smirked. So this is the human? Kalor said aloud. Let's see if you can handle a real warrior, Captain. Or will you fall like all the other weaklings your kind? Alindra's eyes widened. She had not expected Kalor to challenge him publicly, but Daniel did not seem surprised. He nodded slightly, bowing politely to Kalor. I will not fight unfairly, Daniel said quietly. Kalor laughed, a cruel, high-pitched sound. Fairness is for the weak. You will learn quickly that strength is everything here, human. Alindra felt a twinge of worry. She had underestimated Daniel. But she also knew the Zalari's pride could provoke dangerous conflicts. Yet Daniel simply raised a brow and drew a simple practice sword from his belt. The courtyard fell silent. Guards and instructors stopped to watch. Daniel's movements were deliberate, measured. He did not charge recklessly. He did not show aggression. He simply parried, countered, and moved with uncanny precision. Within moments, Kalor was disarmed and off balance, and Daniel held his sword pointed at the prince's chest, without striking. The young prince blinked in shock, then stepped back, humiliated but unharmed. Alindra's breath caught. The human she had thought harmless had just bested one of the most skilled warriors in the palace with ease. Daniel lowered his sword and handed it back to Kalor with a quiet bow. Respect is earned, he said softly. Not assumed, Alindra's mind spun. This human was no ordinary man. He was calm, intelligent, and capable. He was dangerous but not cruel, and yet he had not revealed the full measure of his strength. That evening, Alindra sat alone, staring at the stars. She realized she had misjudged her husband. The human before her was quiet, humble, and polite. And yet, he was capable of things she had never imagined. She thought about the words he had spoken. To survive, we must understand the danger, respect it, and face it when it comes. Alindra could not help but feel a mix of admiration, curiosity, and a tiny spark of fear. The peaceful union she had expected was not peaceful at all. She had married a man whose calm exterior hid the heart of a warrior. The morning sun shone over the Zalari palace, painting the towers with streaks of gold and pink. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of ozone, a reminder of the city's hovering energy fields. Princess Alindra Zalari walked along the grand corridors, her mind still replaying the events of the previous day. The image of Daniel Reeve, her seemingly harmless human husband, disarming her brother Kalor so effortlessly haunted her thoughts. She had spent hours in her private chambers, pacing back and forth, trying to understand him. What kind of man could remain calm while surrounded by powerful warriors who had trained their entire lives in the art of combat? Alindra had believed humans were weak, fragile creatures. But Daniel was rewriting everything she thought she knew. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft hum. A message arrived through her personal communicator. Princess, your husband requests to meet you in the training yard. He says it is urgent. Alindra's curiosity overcame her hesitation. She nodded to herself and quickly left her chambers, descending through the palace corridors toward the open courtyard where the Zalari warriors trained daily. Daniel was already there. Standing in the center of the yard, his stance relaxed but alert. His dark eyes scanned the perimeter, noting the guards and instructors watching curiously. In his hand, he held a human-style training sword, simple, unadorned, yet perfectly balanced. Alindra approached cautiously. "Captain, why have you called me here?" she asked, trying to hide her unease. Daniel turned to her, his expression calm. "Princess, you need to see something. Something important about my people, and about myself." Alindra raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Humans have a different way of understanding strength. On Earth, strength is not just about muscle, speed, or even weapons. It is about adaptability, intelligence, and courage. It is knowing when to fight and when to hold back." Alindra frowned. "So, you are saying your people are smarter than us?" He shook his head gently. "Not smarter, different. Humans survive because we face danger even when it seems impossible. We are not naturally stronger, but we learn to overcome our limits." Before Alindra could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the yard. A group of Zalari cadets, younger warriors who often practiced recklessly, had surrounded a small, strange-looking machine. It was an experimental training drone, programmed to attack anyone who approached. Kaelor, still smarting from his defeat, laughed as he noticed the drone. "This will be simple," he said, gripping his plasma sword. "Even a human could not survive this, much less a cadet." Alindra's eyes widened. "Captain, watch out!" she shouted, but Daniel only nodded calmly. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate. The drone lunged toward him, its sharp mechanical limbs snapping in midair. The Zalari guards expected him to panic or stumble, but Daniel did not. In one fluid motion, he sidestepped the first strike, parried the second with his sword, and used his momentum to disable the drone's central sensor. Sparks flew as the machine toppled to the ground, completely harmless. The Zalari cadet stared in disbelief. Kaelor's face turned red with anger and embarrassment. "Impossible. How did he—" Daniel turned to Alindra, his calm expression unchanged. "It is not about being stronger. It is about understanding danger and controlling it, even when others think it is overwhelming." Alindra's mind raced. She had seen humans' resilience before, stories of wars, of ships surviving attacks that should have destroyed them, but seeing it in action was different. Daniel did not seem like a warrior, yet his precision, control, and calmness made him almost untouchable. Over the next few days, Alindra watched Daniel closely. He observed everything, the guards' routines, the palace defenses, the movements of her family, without intruding or appearing suspicious. When challenged by the Zalari nobles, he responded with humility, yet every answer carried a weight of intelligence that impressed even the most skeptical observers. One afternoon, Alindra decided to test him herself. She had secretly arranged a small obstacle course in the palace gardens, a mix of physical challenges and tactical puzzles designed for Zalari cadets. She watched from the shadows as Daniel stepped forward. The obstacles were tricky. Floating platforms hovered above shallow energy fields. Mechanical predators lunged from hidden compartments. Alindra's heart pounded as Daniel moved through the course. He did not rush. He analyzed every step, predicting movements, adjusting his strategy. When a mechanical predator lunged at him from the shadows, Daniel didn't panic. With a swift motion, he grabbed a nearby branch, twisted it into a makeshift lever, and used it to redirect the machine into a wall. It shattered harmlessly. Alindra gasped. Not only had he survived, but he had turned danger into a tool. After the course, she approached him. "Captain, you make this look effortless. How is it possible?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Effortless is a trick of perspective. Every move I made was measured, planned. Humans are not invincible, but we do not waste energy fighting what we do not need to fight. Survival is about efficiency, knowing what is necessary and what is not." Alindra felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. She had underestimated this human, thinking him harmless. Now she realized she had judged him too quickly, and the truth was far more dangerous. That evening, Alindra attended a private council with her father, Emperor Valen. The conversation turned to the fragile peace treaty with Earth. Some advisors argued that humans were weak, naive, and easily controlled. Others warned that humans should not be underestimated, citing the stories of Daniel's calm dominance in the training yard. Emperor Valen leaned back, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Humans are unpredictable," he said finally. "We know little of their strength and even less of their resolve. Princess Alindra, observe your husband carefully. Learn his ways. He may be more powerful than we suspect." Alindra nodded silently, her mind already racing with memories of Daniel's calm, precise movements. She realized that the man she had mocked, the one she had thought harmless, was quietly rewriting the rules of her empire. Days later, the true test came. A small group of radical Zalari nobles opposed to the peace treaty attempted a minor coup within the city. They had hidden weapons and plasma blades, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alindra, unaware of the full plan, was walking in the palace gardens when Daniel appeared beside her. "Princess," he said calmly, "you should leave the open area now. There is danger nearby." She raised an eyebrow. "Danger? You mean the palace guards will handle it, won't they?" Daniel shook his head. "Not this time. They have weapons that bypass the usual defenses. You must stay close." Before she could protest, chaos erupted. Explosions shook the palace walls and a group of armed nobles burst into the garden. The guards were caught off guard and panic spread. Alindra froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Daniel moved with astonishing speed and precision. He disarmed 2 nobles in a single motion, using their own momentum against them. He did not raise his voice, did not shout commands. Yet the chaos around him seemed to bend to his control. Alindra's heart raced. She had never seen such calm in the face of danger. Daniel was no ordinary human. He was a force of nature, a predator who moved with deadly intelligence and restraint. When one of the nobles lunged at Alindra, Daniel stepped in front of her. With a single fluid motion, he drew his sword and blocked the attack. The noble stumbled back, terrified. The blade Daniel wielded was simple, a human steel sword, but in his hands it was more than a weapon. It was an extension of his will. After several minutes, the nobles were subdued. The palace guards arrived to assist, but it was Daniel who had neutralized the threat. Alindra stood trembling, both in awe and fear. You are not harmless," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel looked at her calmly. "I never was," he said softly. "I only appeared so. Humans survive by being underestimated. It keeps us alive long enough to protect what matters." Alindra's mind reeled. The man she had married, the man she had mocked, was capable of incredible feats. Feats that no Zalari warrior could match in terms of calm precision and survival skill. She realized that Daniel's strength was not in his muscles or even his weapon. His strength was in his mind, his discipline, and his courage. As the sun set over Zalara, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples, Alindra walked beside Daniel in silence. She no longer saw him as harmless. She saw a man who could face any danger, protect what he loved, and change the very rules of her empire. For the first time, she felt a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and fear. The peaceful union she had imagined was gone. She had married a man whose quiet strength could alter the fate of worlds, a man she now realized she might never fully understand. The Zalari capital gleamed under the twin suns, but the glow hid tension beneath the perfect surface. Princess Alindra Zalari paced in her chambers, restless. The attempted coup had rattled her. Though Daniel had subdued the radicals with calm precision, the palace was no longer a place of safety. Her father, Emperor Valen, had summoned his council, but whispers of rebellion floated through every hall. Alindra's thoughts drifted to Daniel. He had moved with terrifying efficiency during the attack, disarming nobles twice his size without a single misstep. Yet he was calm, even serene, as though chaos had no effect on him. The human she had thought harmless was, in fact, the most dangerous force she had ever seen. Her reverie was interrupted by a sharp knock. Talira entered, her expression tense. "Princess, intelligence reports suggest the radicals are planning another strike. This time it may reach the palace itself. They are targeting Captain Reeve." Alindra's stomach tightened. She had seen Daniel handle threats before, but this was different. These were not training exercises. These were Zalari warriors, ruthless and desperate, willing to ignite a war to prove their superiority. She moved quickly to Daniel's chambers. He was already standing by the window, surveying the city with quiet concentration. "They are coming," he said softly when he saw her. "And they are more organized than before. We need a plan. Alindra stepped closer. A plan? You always act as if danger is nothing. I've seen you fight, Captain, but this could be too much. Daniel shook his head gently. It is not too much. Humans do not fear danger. We respect it. We understand it, and then we act. She watched him for a long moment. There was no arrogance in his voice, no bravado, only calm confidence and the kind that could make a mountain move. Before she could ask more, alarms blared across the palace. The council hall where Emperor Valen and his advisors met was under attack. Alindra felt a cold shiver run down her spine. This was not a minor rebellion. This was an all-out attempt to overthrow the ruling family. Daniel's expression hardened. "Stay close to me," he said. "Do not interfere unless I tell you." The palace corridors erupted in chaos. Guards shouted, plasma rifles fired, and smoke began to fill the air. Alindra followed Daniel, her steps quick but careful. The human moved as if the hallways themselves bent to his will. He ducked behind a wall, caught a flying weapon midair, and redirected it harmlessly toward the floor. His movements were precise, fluid, and deadly, yet never reckless. They reached the council chamber. Through the shattered doorway, Alindra saw several armed nobles advancing toward her father. Emperor Valen was cornered, but he held his ground, his energy shield flickering under the assault. Daniel stepped forward, his sword drawn. The Zalari conspirators laughed when they saw him. "This human thinks he can stop us?" One of them sneered. "He is weak. He will fall." Daniel's eyes did not leave them. "You misunderstand," he said calmly. "I am not here to fall. I am here to protect what is worth protecting." With that, he moved. Time seemed to slow. Daniel's sword danced through the air, cutting with precision that seemed impossible. He blocked attacks that should have injured him, using the enemy's own force against them. One conspirator lunged with a plasma blade, only to be thrown backward by a simple wrist motion. Another tried to flank him, but Daniel pivoted effortlessly, striking at their weak points without hesitation. Alindra's heart pounded. She had trained all her life among the strongest warriors in the galaxy, yet Daniel's calm efficiency made them seem clumsy, even foolish. He did not fight with anger or pride. He fought with clarity, with a focus that seemed almost unnatural. Alindra realized then that Daniel's true power was not just his skill, but his mind. He calculated, anticipated, and adapted faster than anyone in the room. Every move was deliberate, every action meaningful. When the smoke cleared, the conspirators lay disarmed, exhausted, and terrified. Not a single one was fatally harmed, yet the message was clear. Daniel Reeve was not to be underestimated. Alindra approached him cautiously. "Captain, you were incredible," she whispered. "I have never seen anything like it." Daniel sheathed his sword and smiled faintly. "You may call it incredible. I call it survival. The same principle applies on Earth and here. Protect what matters and nothing else can harm you." Alindra looked around at the aftermath. The chamber was damaged, but the council was alive. Her father's expression was a mixture of relief and awe. "You, human," he said finally, "have shown more strength in minutes than some Zalari demonstrate in a lifetime. Perhaps we misjudged your species." Daniel inclined his head respectfully. "Not strength, Your Majesty, understanding. Humans learn to survive because we cannot afford to fail. That is our strength." The Emperor studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are a remarkable being, perhaps a necessary one." Later that evening, Alindra returned to her chambers, exhausted but unable to sleep. She thought of the human's reputation for bravery, for endurance, and for surviving impossible odds. And now, having seen it firsthand, she realized it was true. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Daniel entered quietly, carrying his sword in its sheath. "Princess," he said gently, "I need to speak with you." Alindra gestured for him to sit. "What is it, Captain?" Daniel's expression was serious. "The attack today was not the end. The radicals will regroup. They will test the Empire again. You must understand something. Humans fight differently. We do not fight for glory or pride. We fight to survive and to protect those we love. That is why we can appear unstoppable." Alindra listened intently. She realized she was learning more than just about Daniel's skills. She was learning about humanity itself, a species underestimated across the galaxy, yet capable of resilience that even the most advanced civilizations could not ignore. "Captain," she said softly, "you are not harmless. I understand that now, but why do you fight so calmly?" Don't you feel fear? Daniel looked at her, his dark eyes thoughtful. Fear is natural, Princess. But fear can be controlled. Humans do not eliminate fear. We accept it, learn from it, and act anyway. That is how we survive. That is how we protect what matters. Alindra felt a shiver run down her spine. She realized that she had underestimated not only Daniel but his entire species. Humans were not weak as her people believed. They were cunning, adaptive, and fearless in ways the Zalari could scarcely imagine. Over the next few days, the palace prepared for the inevitable. The radicals had retreated for now, but their ambition was clear. Alindra and Daniel spent hours walking through the city, observing the palace defenses and discussing strategies. Alindra began to understand that Daniel's calm demeanor was not arrogance. It was a combination of experience, intelligence, and discipline, qualities that made him deadly, even when unarmed. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the city, Alindra spoke quietly. "Captain, I have always believed my people were the strongest, but I see now, humans are different. You survive because you must, not because you can. And that is remarkable." Daniel smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers. "Strength takes many forms, Princess. Yours is courage, wisdom, and loyalty. Mine is action when it is needed. Together, perhaps we can protect this peace that others try to destroy." Alindra nodded, a sense of awe mixing with determination in her heart. She had thought marriage to Daniel would be a political formality, a quiet union. Instead, she had married a man whose very presence could alter the balance of power in the Empire. That night, as the twin moons rose over Zalara, Alindra could not sleep. She thought of the radicals plotting in the shadows, of the human who could face them without fear, and of the uncertain future ahead. She realized that her peaceful life was gone, replaced by a world where danger and courage walked hand in hand, and where Daniel Reeve, the human she had once believed harmless, was at the center of it all. She whispered to the night sky, almost to herself, "I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but I know one thing. He is not harmless, and perhaps he is exactly what this empire needs." As the stars shimmered above, Daniel sat nearby, his sword at his side, alert and ready. The shadows of war were gathering, but he was prepared. And Alindra realized that with him, she might finally see what true strength looked like. The Empire would soon learn that humanity, underestimated for centuries, was far more than it seemed. And that Daniel Reeve, the quiet human, was only the beginning. The Zalari capital was alive with unrest. News of Daniel's skill during the previous attacks had spread across the city, reaching not only the loyal nobles but also the radicals still hiding in the shadows. Whispered warnings floated through the halls. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, and their leader, Captain Daniel Reeve, was a threat the Empire had never faced before. Princess Alindra Zalari walked alongside Daniel through the palace corridors, their steps quiet but purposeful. The princess's mind was a storm of thoughts. She had always been loyal to her father, to the Empire, but the truth was undeniable. Daniel's calm, precise, and unstoppable strength had opened her eyes to the limits of Zalari arrogance. "Captain," she said softly, glancing at him, "I've never seen anyone fight like you, not even Kalar, and yet, it's not just your sword. It's the way you think. Everything is measured, controlled." Daniel nodded. "Humans survive because we must, Princess. We act when others hesitate. That is our advantage. The radicals will test us again, but we are ready." Alindra's heart quickened. She had watched him turn danger into safety before, but now the stakes were higher. The radicals were organized, desperate, and willing to start a war to achieve their goals. They would not wait, and neither could she. The next day, the radicals struck with greater force. The palace alarms blared, warning of an invasion from within. Explosions shook the walls and smoke filled the corridors. Alindra and Daniel rushed toward the main hall, where the council and Emperor Valen were supposed to be meeting. Daniel moved like a shadow, his sword drawn, his eyes scanning every doorway, every corner. The rebels had plasma rifles and energy blades, but Daniel didn't flinch. Each attack was met with calculated parries and precise counters. He disarmed opponents using their own momentum, avoided unnecessary injury, and protected Alindra every step of the way. Alindra could barely keep up. She had trained as a princess, learning diplomacy, etiquette, and leadership, but none of that prepared her for the chaos of a palace under siege. Yet watching Daniel, she felt a surge of courage. He was more than a husband, more than a soldier. He was a force of survival, and he believed in her too. "Stay close to me," Daniel shouted over the din of explosions. "And do exactly as I say." She nodded, gripping his hand as they turned a corner. Two rebels leaped from above, energy blades raised. Daniel swung his sword in a precise arc, deflecting both attacks. One fell to the ground, stunned but unharmed. The other retreated, fear flickering in their eyes. Alindra's heart pounded. How do you move like that?" she asked, amazed. Daniel's expression was calm, even gentle. "Focus, predict, control, that is all. Humans survive because we train our minds, not just our bodies." The palace corridors led them to the main chamber, where Emperor Valen was cornered by a group of armed conspirators. The Emperor's energy shield flickered, barely holding against the onslaught. Alindra's chest tightened. She had thought her father strong, but even he was vulnerable without Daniel. Daniel stepped forward. His eyes scanned the room. Each rebel had a weakness, a moment of hesitation that Daniel could exploit. In an instant he moved. With a series of precise strikes and defensive maneuvers, the rebels were disarmed and incapacitated. Sparks flew from broken energy weapons, and the chamber filled with the stunned silence of shock and awe. Alindra approached him, her voice trembling. "Captain, you saved him." "All of them." Daniel sheathed his sword. "It is not about saving, Princess. It is about surviving together. The Empire is strong, but only if we protect what is worth protecting." Emperor Valen looked at Daniel with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "You, human, have changed everything. I thought humans weak. But you," his voice faltered. "You are different," Daniel bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, humans survive because we must. That is all." The attack had revealed something critical. The radicals had support inside the palace. Alindra realized that staying passive was no longer an option. She could no longer remain a mere observer, a princess caught between loyalty to her father and the undeniable truth of Daniel's strength. That night, she sought Daniel in the palace gardens. The bioluminescent plants glowed softly, casting a calm light over the paths. Daniel was there, leaning against a marble railing, his sword sheathed, eyes scanning the horizon. "Captain," she said, approaching him, "I can't stay silent anymore. I see the truth. The radicals. They will not stop until they control this empire. I want to stand with you. I want to help." Daniel turned to her, a faint smile on his lips. "Princess, you do not have to. But if you choose to, you must understand what that means. You will fight, risk your life, and face things you cannot imagine. Are you ready?" Alindra squared her shoulders. "I am. I cannot unsee what I've seen." "I will fight with you." Daniel's expression softened. "Then we fight together. Not for conquest, but for survival. For peace." The next day, Alindra and Daniel began organizing a defense. They rallied loyal nobles, trained palace guards in new strategies, and coordinated with humans who had arrived to assist. Alindra learned quickly. Daniel taught her how to anticipate attacks, how to read opponents, and how to use the palace itself as a weapon. Every corner, every shadow became part of their plan. When the radicals struck again, this time with larger numbers and heavier weapons, they were met with unexpected resistance. Daniel and Alindra moved through the battlefield with precision. Daniel's sword deflected plasma bolts, his mind anticipating every strike. Alindra, though not a trained warrior like Daniel, used her knowledge of the palace and strategy to lead squads of loyal soldiers, creating traps and diversions that neutralized key threats. One particularly bold rebel tried to ambush Alindra directly. She froze for a moment, but Daniel appeared at her side just in time. With a swift motion, he disarmed the assailant and pushed Alindra behind a secure wall. "Do not freeze," he whispered. "Observe, react, survive." Alindra felt her courage grow with every encounter. She was no longer just a princess. She was a strategist, a protector, and a partner in Daniel's fight. Together they turned the tide of the battle, forcing the radicals into retreat. By nightfall, the palace was secured. The radicals had fled, but the victory came at a cost. Several loyal guards were injured, and the palace had suffered damage. Alindra and Daniel stood side by side, surveying the aftermath. "You fought well," Daniel said, his voice calm. "Humans survive because we protect what matters. You fought for this empire, not out of duty, but because you chose to. That is courage." Alindra looked at him, admiration and determination shining in her eyes. I have learned from you, Daniel. Humans, your kind, you are stronger than anyone imagined, not just with swords, but with your mind and heart. That is the true strength of your species. Daniel nodded. And you, Princess, have the strength to stand beside me. Together we are more than we seem. That is why the radicals failed. Not because of weapons, not because of numbers, but because we fought with understanding, courage, and unity. As the night sky stretched above the palace, dotted with stars, Alindra made a silent vow. She would no longer be a passive observer. She would fight alongside Daniel, learn from him, and help protect the fragile peace they had built. The radicals had shown the Empire's vulnerability, but Daniel had shown something greater, the unstoppable spirit of humanity. Alindra realized that the true power of humans was not just in their weapons or strength, but in their courage, intelligence, and unyielding will to survive. She turned to Daniel, her voice soft but resolute. Captain, the Empire may never understand humans the way you do, but I do, and I choose to stand with you. Always. Daniel smiled faintly, placing a reassuring hand on hers. Then we fight together, Princess. Not for glory, not for conquest, but for what is right. For life. For peace. The palace was quiet now, but Alindra knew this was only the beginning. The shadows of war still lingered, waiting for another chance to strike. But with Daniel by her side, she felt ready. Together, they would face whatever came, and prove that humanity, underestimated for centuries, could change the course of an empire. That night, Alindra made another silent promise. She would never doubt humans again. She had seen their courage, their precision, and their heart. She had seen the man she had married, once thought harmless, and to become a force that could protect worlds. The blood oath was not written in ink, but in action and trust. Alindra and Daniel had pledged themselves to each other, to the Empire, and to the fragile peace they had fought to preserve. And they both knew that the coming days would test them like never before. But for the first time, Alindra felt true hope. The Empire had a defender it had never expected, a human who could fight, protect, and inspire. And together, she and Daniel would ensure that peace was more than a word. It was a living, breathing reality. The twin suns of Zilara rose over the palace, casting long shadows across the battle-scarred city. Princess Alindra Zilari and Captain Daniel Reeve stood atop the palace ramparts overlooking the courtyard below. It was the calm before the storm. The radicals, though weakened, had gathered their forces for one final, desperate strike. This was not just an attack. It was an attempt to seize control of the Empire entirely. Alindra's chest tightened. She had trained, planned, and fought alongside Daniel before. But the scale of this battle was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The radicals had mobilized dozens of elite warriors, armed with advanced Zilari weaponry. Every corridor, every gate, every tower would become a battlefield. Daniel stood beside her, calm as always, his sword gleaming in the sunlight. His dark eyes scanned the courtyard, assessing, calculating. Alindra knew that he was ready for anything, but she also knew that he could not fight alone. Princess, Daniel said quietly, today we do not just defend the palace. We protect the Empire, the people, and the fragile peace we have built. Stay close, follow my lead, and trust your instincts. Alindra nodded. I will. We fight together. The first wave of radicals struck like a storm. Explosions rocked the palace gates, and smoke billowed into the air. The loyal Zilari guards met them with determination. But the radicals were skilled, ruthless, and prepared. Plasma blades clashed, energy shields flickered, and the sounds of battle echoed through the city. Daniel moved through the chaos like a shadow, his sword striking with precision, blocking attacks that would have killed others. Each movement was calculated, fluid, and deadly. Rebels fell not to anger but to skill. Daniel disarmed them, incapacitated them, and moved on, never letting his calm falter. Alindra followed closely, coordinating squads of loyal soldiers. She had learned from Daniel how to anticipate attacks, use the palace's architecture to her advantage, and create traps for the enemy. She directed the soldiers to block corridors, secure exits, and protect key locations. Her voice carried authority, courage, and strategy, and the soldiers responded, inspired by her determination. In the midst of the chaos, a group of elite radicals broke through the outer defenses, heading straight for Emperor Valen. Alindra's heart raced. Without hesitation, Daniel surged forward, intercepting the group with a calm, lethal efficiency. The battle became a blur of steel, sparks, and movement. One rebel tried to strike Alindra directly, aiming to eliminate the princess and demoralize the loyalists. Daniel appeared just in time, deflecting the attack with a precise swing of his sword. He pushed Alindra behind cover and turned to face the assailant. Within moments, the rebel was disarmed, stunned, and retreating. "Do not freeze," Daniel shouted, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Observe, react, survive." Alindra felt a surge of courage. She moved among the soldiers, giving commands, assisting wherever she could. She was no longer just a princess. She was a strategist, a protector, and Daniel's partner in battle. Hours passed, and the radicals' assault showed no sign of ending. They had anticipated loyalist defenses, but they had underestimated Daniel and the human soldiers supporting him. Daniel moved like a storm through the battlefield, never reckless, never wasting energy, yet striking decisively whenever needed. At one point, a large group of rebels cornered him near the palace gates. They believed overwhelming numbers would be enough. But Daniel did not panic. With calm precision, he used their own force against them, twisting, parrying, and redirecting attacks. One by one, they fell back, stunned and disarmed. Alindra watched, awe and admiration burning in her chest. The man she had once believed harmless had become the heart of the Empire's defense. His calm strength inspired everyone. Loyal soldiers, Zalari nobles, and even those who had once doubted humanity. The final phase of the attack came as the sun began to set. The radicals, desperate and cornered, deployed experimental energy weapons capable of tearing through walls and shields. The palace trembled. An explosion shook the ground beneath Alindra's feet. Daniel moved toward the threat, his sword drawn. He assessed the weapons, their operators, and the potential paths of destruction in seconds. Then he acted. With a combination of human ingenuity and skill, he disabled the experimental weapons, redirecting energy bursts safely into the air. Sparks and fire lit the battlefield, but Daniel moved unharmed, as though he could predict every strike before it happened. Alindra, following closely, organized the final defenses. She led groups of soldiers to strategic positions, securing the palace and protecting civilians trapped in the chaos. She was no longer afraid. With Daniel at her side, she felt a courage she had never known. As the last wave of radicals advanced, Daniel raised his sword high. The light glinted off the blade, a symbol of both authority and protection. His voice carried over the battlefield, calm but commanding. "Enough," he shouted. "You have tested the Empire, you have tested our resolve, and you have failed. Leave now and survive. Continue this path and you will face the consequences of your actions." For a moment, silence fell. The radicals, though desperate, realized they were outmatched. Daniel's calm dominance, combined with Alindra's strategic control of the palace and loyalist forces, had turned the tide completely. Slowly, the remaining rebels surrendered, dropping their weapons and raising their hands. The palace was quiet again. Smoke lingered in the air and the walls bore the scars of battle. But the threat had passed. Alindra and Daniel stood side by side, surveying the battlefield. Loyal soldiers and nobles approached, offering thanks, relief, and awe. Emperor Valen emerged from the council chamber, his expression a mixture of pride, disbelief, and gratitude. "Captain Reeve, Princess Alindra, you have saved the Empire. I did not believe humans were capable of such." He paused, struggling for words. "You are extraordinary." Daniel bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, humans survive because we must, not because we seek glory. The Empire stands because you protect it, and we fought to ensure that peace endures." Alindra placed a hand on Daniel's arm. "The Empire will never underestimate humans again," she said softly. "And neither will I." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Indeed, perhaps. This is the start of a new era. An era where understanding, courage, and unity define strength, not just power or weaponry." That evening, Alindra and Daniel walked through the palace gardens, the bioluminescent plants casting a soft glow over the paths. The city below was quiet, recovering from the chaos, but Alindra felt a sense of hope stronger than ever. "Captain," she said, her voice soft, "I have seen humans' true strength. Not just your strength, but your species. It is not just about fighting. It is about courage, intelligence, and heart. That is why you survive where others fail." Daniel smiled faintly, his hand brushing hers. "Strength takes many forms, Princess, and you have the strength to stand beside me. Together we protect not just the Empire, but everything worth living for." Alindra looked at him, admiration and resolve in her eyes. "Then we continue together always," he nodded. "Always." The next morning, the palace was alive with activity. Repairs began, soldiers trained, and civilians returned to the streets. The radicals had been defeated, but the victory was more than just survival. It was a demonstration of humanity's spirit, the will to survive, to protect, and to inspire. Alindra stood on the balcony, watching Daniel train with human and Zalari soldiers alike. He moved with calm precision, teaching, protecting, and leading. She realized that he was not just a warrior. He was a symbol. Humanity's courage and intelligence could change the galaxy, not through conquest, but through strength, unity, and heart. She turned to him, smiling. "You are not harmless, Daniel. You never were. And neither is your species." Daniel returned her smile, sheathing his sword. "We never were. But now the Empire knows. And perhaps they will finally understand what humans are truly capable of." Alindra nodded. Together they watched the twin suns rise over Zalara, the city peaceful for the first time in weeks. The palace, the Empire, and the fragile peace they had fought for were safe, and humanity, underestimated for centuries, had proven that courage, intelligence, and heart could triumph against any foe. As Daniel stood beside her, sword at his side, Alindra realized the truth. The man she had once thought harmless had become a force that could change the fate of worlds. And together, they would face whatever came next. Not with fear, but with courage, unity, and unyielding human spirit. The sword of peace had been drawn, not for conquest, but for protection, and it would remain ready whenever the galaxy threatened the fragile harmony they had fought to preserve.